So I want you to imagine that you were standing in a totally sterile research lab in Paris.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, and right on the table in front of you is a snail, just a normal snail. And you send a mild, completely localized electric shock right into its shell.
Poor snail, but all right.
Right, but here's the actual catch. At that exact same millisecond across the entire Atlantic Ocean, over in America, a second snail violently recoils.
Wow. At the exact same time.
The exact same millisecond. No wires connecting them, no communication devices at all, just this invisible, instantaneous link that completely ignores the thousands of miles of ocean between them.
I mean, it sounds like complete science fiction, or like maybe a glitch in our entire understanding of physics. But the crazy thing is, it's actually the famous Barua experiment introduced by Professor Gregory over at Edinburgh University. And it really forces us to ask this, a pretty uncomfortable question. Is the physical isolation we experience every single day just, a massive illusion?
And that question right there is the absolute core of today's deep dive. We are unpacking excerpts from this highly specific, really provocative text. It's titled, "There is a Supernatural Soul in the Universe, 40 Evidence Proving the Existence of the Greatest Creator."
Quite a title.
Yeah, written by an author named Su Feng. And our mission today is to thoroughly explore the author's boldest claim, which is that the universe is governed by this super wisdom.
Right.
The text basically argues that absolutely everything, from the people you randomly bump into on the street to the weather to like the plants in your own garden, is tied into this perfectly programmed cosmic network.
And specifically, we're going to examine what the text categorizes as biological remote sensing, sensation, and telepathy.
Yes.
And right off the bat, I think it is vital to set the stage for you listening, because our goal here is not to, validate this from a traditional scientific standpoint, nor are we here to endorse any specific religious perspective.
Definitely not.
Right. The text presents this highly organized, deeply philosophical worldview, and it's delivered in a remarkably calm, really insightful tone. So we are just here to impartially step inside that worldview and see how its internal logic actually works.
Yeah, because it fundamentally challenges our modern understanding of coincidence.
Yeah.
It argues that random chance simply does not exist.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can really understand the underlying mechanics of this cosmic network, we have to look at the bizarre anomalies the author uses to prove it's actually there.
The evidence, essentially.
Right, the evidence. We aren't just talking about a vague feeling of déjà vu here. The text provides these case studies that seem to completely defy the laws of physical distance and, biological independence.
So let's start with distance.
Yeah, because the snails in Paris and America are one thing, but the text details this wild story from 1899 involving a famous American actor, a guy named Charles Cleveland.
Oh, this is one of the more striking examples for sure. So Cleveland dies and is buried in Galveston, Texas.
Right.
And in 1900, this massive hurricane hits the area and completely floods the cemetery. The coffin is swept away and lost. For literally decades, everyone presumes it's entirely gone.
Gone forever.
Yeah.
But then you fast forward 28 years to September 1927, and this heavy wooden coffin mysteriously washes ashore.
And it doesn't just land on some random beach, right?
It washes up exactly at Cleveland's original homeland, up in Prince Edward Island in Canada.
Which is, 3,000 kilometers away?
3,000 kilometers. Just think about the sheer absurdity of that for a second. An inanimate wooden box navigating these complex ocean currents, surviving decades of storms, only to return to its exact point of origin. How does a box know where it's from?
Well, under the framework of this text, the box doesn't know anything. But the universal system governing it does.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the text groups this with other phenomena that defy biological boundaries and time. For instance, the author cites a case of quadruplet brothers. It's reported that if one brother catches a cold, the other three inevitably develop a fever.
Even if they aren't together.
Regardless of whether they share a living space. They even yawn in perfect synchronized unison, like 3 mouths opening at the exact same fraction of a second.
It's like they share a single nervous system that's just distributed across 4 bodies.
Exactly.
And the text suggests this hidden network orchestrates human geography, too. There's this story of a mother and daughter separated for over 40 years.
40 years. Wow.
Yeah, and the daughter was adopted, completely unaware of her true parentage. Then one day, she just happens to wander down this random, out-of-the-way alley.
Just by chance.
just by chance.
Yeah.
She sees an old woman struggling, goes to help her, and the woman invites her into her humble hut. And on the wall is a photograph of the old woman in her youth.
And the daughter has the exact same photograph, right?
Yes, given to her by her foster mother, which she had kept hidden at the bottom of a box for decades. The woman in the alley was her birth mother.
40 years of separation ended by an accidental stroll. I mean, it's incredible.
It is. And if that isn't wild enough, consider the psychic mice of New York City.
Oh, I love this one.
It's so creepy.
Mm-hmm.
In an apartment building on 80th Street, a couple named Macy observed this terrifying pattern. This massive flock of mice suddenly evacuated the building across the street.
Just totally cleared out.
Yeah, and shortly after, an elderly resident in that building died by suicide. After that, the mice just returned.
Like nothing happened.
Right. Then a new tenant moved in. The mice fled again. Days later, a young man visiting the apartment died of a heart attack. The mice returned.
There's a serious pattern here.
Oh, it continues. Finally, an industrialist moved in. The mice packed up for a third time, and true to form, the man died in a plane crash shortly after.
What's fascinating here is that the author doesn't just lump these events together and, label them spooky mysteries or ghost stories.
There's a logic to it.
Yeah, the text is highly analytical. The author points out that the 80th Street building was originally constructed by a lawyer who actually suffered from lunacy and drowned himself.
Ah, so there's history.
Exactly. The argument is that the environment itself held this energetic imprint, and the mice were perceiving actual pre-death energetic shifts, like signals that human senses completely bypass.
It's as if these subjects, whether it's snails or wooden coffins or human beings or mice, are all connected via this hidden universal Wi-Fi network that simply doesn't care about physical distance or traditional sensory organs.
I think the Wi-Fi analogy is perfect, and the text categorizes these connections into distinct physiological and spiritual mechanisms.
Different frequencies.
Essentially, yes, different frequencies on that universal router, and they are remote sensing, sensation, and telepathy.
Okay, so if we are all theoretically walking around in range of this Wi-Fi, how do we log in? Let's decode these frequencies, starting with remote sensing.
Sure.
The text makes a hard distinction here. This is biological, not technological. So we aren't talking about satellites or sonar here. The author defines biological remote sensing as the ability to perceive distant conditions by receiving thought waves.
Right, through what he calls directional thinking.
Exactly.
A great way to visualize this is the author's own comparison to a television set. So a broadcasting station transmits electromagnetic signals constantly, right? It's just invisible chaos in the air.
Right, until you tune in.
Exactly. If you turn your dial to the precise resonant frequency of a station, the chaos suddenly becomes a clear picture of an event happening miles away. The text posits that the human mind can act as both the transmitter and the receiver, tuning into these resonant frequencies across time and space.
Which perfectly explains historical prophecies, because the author points to figures like Nostradamus, Sakyamuni, and Dorothy.
He even brings up the Russian prophets, right?
Yeah, he specifically cites 60 Russian prophets who accurately predicted the death of Tsar Ivan 12 days before it actually happened.
Wow.
And he mentions the people who refused to board the Titanic because they intuitively sensed an impending disaster. Plus, the author makes a rather audacious claim about his own work here.
What does he say?
He says his knowledge, including his descriptions of this 36-dimensional space, doesn't come from a textbook or logical reasoning at all. It comes directly from this spiritual intuition.
That is bold. But the text is very careful to note that conscious remote sensing is incredibly rare. The author compares humanity to a beehive.
Oh, right, the queen bee analogy.
There can only be a few queen bees in a swarm.
Okay, wait, I have to pause here. Because if this conscious tuning is reserved for a few rare queen bees, what about the rest of us?
Well, that's where the second mechanism comes in. The text introduces sensation, or telesthesia, as the unconscious version of this network.
And the prime example they use for this is breast milk, right?
Yes. The text points out that milk doesn't just appear during pregnancy. It arrives as a physiological response exactly when the newborn baby externally requires it.
Right. It's not a timed thing. It's a responsive thing.
Correct. Or think about tears. Your tear ducts don't leak constantly. They deploy automatically when a foreign object invades the eye or when there is an immense emotional fluctuation.
So it's an automated process.
Sensation is a physiological program designed by the greatest creator. So the snails getting shocked, the mother and daughter reuniting, the quadruplets sharing a fever, these are all driven by this unconscious mechanism.
But, I mean, doesn't that strip away a massive amount of human agency?
How do you mean?
Well, if conscious remote sensing is locked away from like 99% of us, and sensation is just an automatic bodily response, aren't we essentially living as pre-programmed hardware?
Just robots running a script.
Yeah. Like, we're biological machines running a script we don't control while the universe just pulls all the strings.
It's a completely fair hesitation, totally, but the text frames this entirely differently. It doesn't view these unconscious mechanisms as a prison, but rather as vital protective fail-safes.
Protective. From what?
From the network itself. If every single human being had the active ability to consciously remote sense to tune into every frequency of the future, the distant present, the thoughts of everyone around them, the text argues that our nervous systems would literally fry.
Oh, like a sensory overload.
Exactly. The world would fall into absolute, unmanageable chaos. Sensation is just the body functioning exactly as the greatest creator designed it, automating the complex background processes so that biological harmony is maintained.
Like breathing.
Exactly. You don't consciously tell your heart to beat, you know?
Yeah.
It just does.
Okay, I see the logic there, a cosmic failsafe. So, sensation explains our internal bodily reactions and automated connections. But what about our relationship with the external world? Like the weather or mountains or just the environment?
That brings us to the third frequency, telepathy. While sensation handles the physiological stuff, the text defines telepathy as the universal web binding everything, and I really mean everything.
Organic, inorganic.
Yes, humans, rocks, atmospheric pressure, all of it.
The author even argues that our modern mechanical world is just crudely mimicking what nature already does.
Right, with sensors and things.
Yeah, think about automatic sliding doors at a grocery store, or street lamps that just flick on the exact moment the sun dips below the horizon. We build these inductive sensors into our cities, but the text claims the natural world has been operating on telepathic induction since the dawn of time.
And to prove how deep this telepathic induction goes, literally down to the molecular level, the text references the teachings of a Buddhist master, Master Jinkong.
Oh, the water crystal research.
Exactly. According to this research, when human beings consciously direct words of thanks and love toward a glass of water, its molecular arrangement forms incredibly beautiful, highly symmetrical crystals.
But when it's exposed to negative energy,
When directed with hostility, anger, or even just indifference, the molecular structure collapses into this chaotic, ugly assemblage.
and this is exactly why you, the listener, should care deeply about this concept. Because you are 70% water. The Earth is 70% water.
It's a huge implication.
Huge. If your thoughts and emotional frequencies can physically scramble the crystalline structure of water in a lab, imagine what your internal monologue is doing to your own physical health.
Or the environment.
Right. The text scales this up to the macro level, too. It argues that refusing to pollute rivers isn't just a matter of environmental policy. It's a telepathic necessity. Caring for the Earth's water literally prevents floods and droughts because the water telepathically responds to our collective treatment of it.
And this telepathic web is constantly visible in the animal and plant kingdoms as well. When animals act frantically before an earthquake or when someone's arthritic joints ache right before a thunderstorm.
My grandmother used to always say her knees knew when it was going to rain.
Exactly, that is telepathy at work. The environment is shifting its frequency, and the biology of the life forms within it receives that transmission. The text even explains the strange, suicidal behavior of bamboo fields blooming and dying simultaneously.
Oh, right, as a response to disaster.
Yes, it's a telepathic response to an impending disaster.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because to keep this from sounding like just some abstract physics lecture, the author shares these incredibly personal, mundane stories.
The everyday applications.
Yeah, for example, he had a colleague who rented a villa with 4 rows of massive 30-meter-long grapevines. And for years, these vines were totally barren. Not a single grape.
Completely dead.
Right. But the colleague decided to just start caring for them. He watered them, dug up the weeds, applied some fertilizer, and suddenly the vines exploded with heavy grapes.
Just from the attention.
Yeah. The colleague told the author, plants will repay when they get enough care and protection.
Which implies an emotional transaction, right? Sort of telepathic gratitude rather than just basic botany.
Yes, and the author actually experienced the darker side of this transaction himself.
Ah, the story with the tree.
Yeah. Outside his bedroom window, there was this tree that bloomed with beautiful, highly fragrant white and purple flowers. And one day, he looked at it and selfishly wished it would bloom more often just to satisfy his own enjoyment. Just a pathing internal desire.
A private thought.
Exactly. But 3 months later, to his absolute shock, the tree bloomed again.
But the outcome wasn't what he expected.
Not at all. The second bloom had almost no scent, just this faint, exhausted fragrance. So he asked the compound's gardener, a man named Gift, who had worked there for a decade. And Gift confirmed the tree had only ever bloomed once a year.
So the wish actually forced it.
Right. The author suddenly realized that his private, selfish wish had telepathically pressured the tree. It forced the tree to overstretch its natural limits just to please him. The author felt immense guilt and actually apologized to the tree in his mind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author uses this guilt to introduce a major tenet of his worldview. Human arrogance actively harms the telepathic web.
Right, because our thoughts aren't private.
The text suggests our inner thoughts are never truly private. Our emotions leak out into the environment. They alter the biology of a grapevine, they exhaust a blooming tree, they literally scramble the water in our own cells.
So if our internal thoughts have the power to physically manipulate botany and molecular structures, how do they alter the events of our own lives?
Bringing it back to the human experience.
Right. This leads us to what we might call the mind-reality feedback loop. The text provides several practical examples of how telepathy dictates human events. There's this really profound story about a friend's 80-year-old father.
The man in Zimbabwe.
Yes, he was living in Zimbabwe, perfectly healthy, completely enjoying his life, but out of nowhere, he became inexplicably vexed. Just this deep, irrational anxiety took over, and he insisted he had to return to his homeland in China immediately.
And his family obliged him, right?
They did, but almost as soon as he arrived back in China, he passed away peacefully in his sleep.
The author describes this as physiological telepathy. He calls it the beckoning of the gods.
The beckoning of the gods. That's a powerful phrase.
It really is. The man's conscious mind didn't know his biological clock was expiring, but his body received the pre-death signal and translated it into this overwhelming, undeniable urge to return to his origin point.
It's a very intense example. But the text also applies this feedback loop to incredibly common low-stakes situations, like playing poker.
Oh, this is a great everyday example.
Yeah, the author recounts a night where he and his wife played cards with friends for 6 solid hours. And for 6 hours, they were dealt absolute garbage.
Just the worst hands possible.
Terrible hand after terrible hand. He reflected on it later and realized that for days leading up to the game, both he and his wife had been feeling deeply upset and distracted.
So their state of mind affected the cards.
The author concludes that a disturbed mind literally brings a mess of cards, and a calm mind brings orderly cards.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the last time you were overwhelmed with stress. Did you suddenly drop your keys, stub your toe, and hit literally every red light on your commute?
It always happens like that.
Right. The text argues that isn't a string of bad luck. That is your chaotic mind telepathically reordering the physical reality around you.
And conversely, an aligned mind magnetically draws in exactly what it requires. The author mentions a time he desperately wanted to read the works of a highly spiritual Taiwanese writer named Lifechanyuan.
But he couldn't get the books.
Right. Living abroad, he had no access to them. But without any coordination or making any requests, a young woman from China came to visit him and handed him a gift.
Let me guess. The books.
It was exactly 2 books by Lifechanyuan. He viewed this as his telepathic desire naturally organizing the universe to deliver those physical objects directly into his hands.
To really codify the mechanics of this, the text cites a quote from the entity known as Seth. It goes, "Physiological symptoms are communications from the inner self, indications that we are making mental errors of one kind or another."
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. In this worldview, an illness or an injury isn't a random biological failure. It's a glaring notification that your spiritual alignment is fundamentally off.
And this extends far beyond just a single human body. The author scales this mutual induction to the absolute highest level of human history.
Like global events.
Exactly. The text claims that wars, diseases, conflicts, and natural disasters are the macro results of humanity's collective mental errors. It even goes so far as to state that the Great Flood in the time of Noah wasn't a random weather event.
It was telepathic.
Yes, it was the direct telepathic consequence of human conceit and arrogance. Humanity's collective hostility shifted the environment so drastically that the planet's water literally responded with a cataclysm.
So what does this all mean? The text we've unpacked today offers an incredibly dense, profoundly interconnected lens for viewing existence. It argues that absolute isolation is just a total myth.
Completely false.
Nothing is disconnected. From the snail recoiling in a Paris lab, to the chaotic water molecules in a glass of water, to the unsaid desires echoing in your head, you are an active, consequential participant in an infinitely sensitive cosmic web.
You aren't just moving through a static universe.
No. The universe is breathing with you. It's reacting to your exact frequency.
And this raises an important question, which is the philosophical core I really want to leave you with today. The author ultimately attributes all of these mechanisms, remote sensing, sensation, telepathy, to the Tao, which is a concept rooted in Lao Tzu's philosophy.
Right.
These aren't just magic tricks, you know. They are intricate fail-safes designed by the greatest creator to ruthlessly maintain the balance of nature. When humanity acts with arrogance, the balance corrects itself through a macro disaster.
And on a personal level.
When an individual is chaotic, the balance corrects itself through a bad hand of poker or even a physical illness. So if our unconscious thoughts dictate the cards we're dealt and our hidden hostility scrambles the water inside our cells, is there actually any such thing as being a victim of circumstance? If this text's underlying logic holds true, every impossible coincidence, every reunion, and every piece of supposed bad luck you've ever experienced, it might just be the universe holding up a perfectly polished mirror to your internal state, desperately trying to course correct you back to the Tao.
Wow. What an incredible thought to walk away with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Look around you today, at the plants on your desk, the weather outside, the people you inevitably bump into. Keep questioning the reality around you and pay attention to those invisible threads. You might just realize you've been pulling on them your entire life.